currently held by Bill McGee. It includes parts of our area, including Madison County. And John is on the line right now. Are you actually driving down the road, or are you sitting here this morning?
No, I'm sitting for safety's sake. I'm sitting right now.
Okay, good. So you're tell us a little bit about you. You're from Brookfield, a place that I know a little bit about.
Yeah, I'm a town supervisor in Brookfield. I spent 9 years so far having the honor of being the supervisor of my town. Before that, I spent 7 years on the local school board and served for 4 years as president of that board.
For those that don't know, that's would be just south of Route 20, right? Brookfield?
Yeah, South Route 20, beautiful setting in the hills of southern Madison County.
And I wanted to just give you a couple of notes. First of all, you were a school board member there for a school district that has, maybe a dozen kids per class?
Well, a few more than that, but it's a small school. We got a couple hundred kids from K to 12.
Legendary in the 1980s, though, for their basketball program.
Yes, they were.
No doubt. And back in the 70s, late 70s, not only wheel days, if you ever get down that way for that, but as a kid in high school, I made $50. I played in a band at the Madison County Fair when I was like 15, 14 years old. So, okay, enough of that. But that's Brookfield. Really beautiful over there, though, John. It's a great place, I imagine, to live.
We love it. We love it.
All right, so why you're running, going against incumbent Bill McGee, who has a great deal of experience. Why are you stepping in here?
Well, I mean, there's a number of issues, that have to do with Mr. McGee that I take exception with. One of the main issues going right now with the voters in New York State is ethics. Most polls show that ethics is the number one issue on people's minds. You're seeing your leaders of the Assembly and the Senate being hauled out in handcuffs. Over the past 10 years, 30 representatives plus have been arrested and indicted for a number of improprieties. So, I mean, if you can't trust in government, what can you do? You can't plan for infrastructure. You can't plan for health care. You can't plan for education if you can't trust the government that's writing your laws. So ethics is probably one of the top issues that I plan on addressing when I get to Albany.
And you have a story, a life story, which of course is there in Brookfield. But you are the first in your family to earn a college degree.
Yes, I am, as a matter of fact. And my profession is I'm a licensed respiratory therapist, and I worked hard, worked my way through college, worked 2 jobs, as a matter of fact. And I'm proud of my work ethic. I was raised by a single-parent mom who worked very, very hard to put bread on the table, and I think that gave me a good work ethic, gave me perspective on you have to work hard and you have to earn what you got.
Yeah. And where do you stand on some of these issues down there in Albany? Let me throw out guns. It's always a big topic in this area because of Remington and the Second Amendment.
Well, I mean, I'll give my a little background. I'm a life member of the NRA. I just had the honor of being endorsed by the New York State Rifle and Pistol Association. I collect. I'm a concealed weapons permit holder. I'd like to do a little reloading when I have the time. So I'm a gun enthusiast, to say the least. And, this deal with the SAFE Act, now that we're talking about it, Mr. McGee voted against the SAFE Act, I should say, but every year he votes for a budget that props up the SAFE Act with millions and millions of dollars. So I'm not exactly sure how he wants it there. He votes against, but he votes to fund it. So, I'm not sure you can have it both ways.
How about some of the issues when you were on school board and you have to feel the restraints, the stranglehold that budgets really put on school districts out of Albany? What are your thoughts?
Well, I'll tell you, Bill, here's the biggest problem. One of the biggest problems I see with school funding is you got too many politicians in the equation. You got downstate politicians, of course, that are concerned about the best interests of their constituents and their students and their schools, and you have upstate, feeling the same. Now, unfortunately, the cradle of power in New York State is downstate. That means that New York State has a kind of a cockeyed way of looking at things. Upstate usually ends up getting the short end of the stick when it comes to education, health care, infrastructure. You got to have somebody in there like me who's willing to roll up his sleeves, get in their face, and fight for what's got to be done for my constituents.
Bill McGee's been there since, what, 1990
Forever.
or so? Yeah, okay, forever. All right. Well, talk about that. Talk about his record. He being a Democrat and in a rural area, which is not as common here upstate.
No, it's not. And I can understand some of the accomplishments of Mr. McGee, but if you look at the power structure and how it's changed in Albany, for years and years, Mr. McGee voted to prop up Shelley Silver, who, of course, is now waiting to be sent to prison. The power structure is different now. You got a guy in there who's now Speaker of the Assembly. He's from downstate. I don't think his concerns really lie with upstate New York, and I don't think Mr. McGee has the clout given that new power structure that he had at one time. So, I've got a real concern that given that lack now of influence that he has, that we're just not going to be able to get what we need and we deserve in upstate New York, and in particular the 121st Assembly District.
Yeah, and working for the town of Brookfield, a lot of, we talk about schools being strangled by budgets and money coming out of Albany, but municipalities as well. You have the tax cap, and where do you stand on the tax cap?
Well, I tell you, my budget every year since the tax cap was initiated at the town, we've never had to waive the property tax cap. Over my 9 years in office, I've cut taxes more than $1 per thousand. We've invested almost $1 million in the infrastructure and equipment, and we haven't had to raise the taxes 1 cent. So I'm very proud of my record on the town. We've worked hard, and we've used common sense, and it's that kind of approach that I want to take to Albany. $156 billion of budget this year, and no one can convince me that every single penny of that is well spent. So we're going to put that budget under the microscope, and I will not vote for a budget that has a tax increase. I don't on the county, and I don't on the town. You
just put out a release about it's your anti-corruption plan, which you say exposes McGee and his weak ethics record. That's the headline. Talk about that.
Well, at a debate last night, I called out Mr. McGee on the fact that he has voted for Sheldon Silver a number of times. In fact, he even supported him after Mr. Silver was indicted. If you're a representative in Albany, it's your commitment. It's very important that you call out officials that you think aren't doing the right thing. And so for years and years, Mr. McGee voted to prop up Sheldon Silver with the promise, of course, that he was going to bring home the bacon. I'm sorry. I'm not sleeping with crooks in order to get what I need for my district. I'm just going to plain work hard and get it like that.
What did he do to support Silver after the indictment?
Well, his statements continuously supported Sheldon Silver. If you look at the record, McGee voted against pension forfeiture for public officials before he caved in to public pressure. He also voted against term limits for legislative leaders. In January of 2016, my opponent voted against 17 good government bills. And unless he's pressured by the public to change his stand, that's usually where he ends up with his position, right in line with the downstate Democrats. And we just can't afford that anymore.
Where are you on term limits?
Term limits, 8-year term limits on legislative leaders and committee chairpersons. 8 years should give them long enough to be able to do what they can do and then move on.
How about the money that's funneled into Albany and into politics, that special interest money? What are your thoughts?
Well, one of my first bills that I'm going to introduce in the State Assembly will be cleaning up corruption bill. And that's going to end things like bid rigging. It's going to be a requirement that you don't have any connections to our elected representatives if you've done any work with the state for a certain amount of time. I'm going to limit special interest money in politics. We're going to move the contribution limit from $100,000 to $10,000. The average guy who gives 10 or 20 or $100 to someone's campaign should have just as much say, just as much representation as a guy who comes up with 5 or 10,000. I'm going to make sure that there's a level playing field when it comes to the amount of input that people have in my administration.
And that I'm sure you know this full well, that you'll be working as a member of the minority. Tough to get stuff done. How will you work around that?
Well, that whole minority-majority argument, it's a little frustrating because if you look at, you got 42 assemblymen in the state assembly that are Republicans. They literally represent millions of people. So does that mean just because you're not in the majority, those millions of people are going to get shortchanged. I don't believe that.
Yeah.
And that's going to motivate me to work twice as hard to make sure that, of course, I reach across the aisle. I want to form a coalition with some of my Democratic counterparts. If you got a good idea, let's work together for the constituents. Put the ego on the shelf, and let's get the work done.
And what's the line from the commercial? It's you're going to get a little taste of what John Salka's all about. Or what's the line?
Well, my slogan is "Let's turn it around."
Okay, let's turn it around.
John, it's a great way because when we go to these debates and when I speak publicly, I lay it on the line.
Yep.
I ask people, look. Just ask yourself this: can we continue to go in the direction that we're going in the state, in the country? And most people nod their head and say, absolutely not. So my slogan of "Let's turn it around" is clear and concise, and it tells people exactly what I plan on doing.
All right, John Salka is a Republican in the 121st Assembly District. It includes Madison County, parts of Madison County, and the race is 2 weeks, actually less than 2 weeks away now.
Can't wait.
Against Bill McGee. Bill will be on tomorrow, by the way, just to make that notation. John, thanks for coming on this morning. I appreciate it.
And thank you for your time.
Okay, John Salka.